Awesome. Welcome, everybody. We're just going to give it a few minutes while people filter in.
My laptop stand just collapsed.
Awesome. It's good to see so many people already joining on time. We will wait for the late ones. That's often a lot of us. While we're waiting, if you want to go ahead and just say hello and maybe where you're from in the chat room, it would be good for us to see how many corners of the earth we're reaching and representing here today. We got rainy England already representing. Another England, Market Rawson, don't know. Maybe Lincolnshire is probably the known place, but Australia.
We get started and people can keep putting in where they're from in the chat.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. Let the Canadians catch up. That's us.
So welcome everyone to session 2 of the EDIG 2022 E-Conference, the theme of which is awareness in equity, diversity and inclusivity. This session aims to provide a space to discuss some of the broader themes and challenges faced by underrepresented groups in the geosciences in order for us all to listen, to learn and to act. My name is Aileen Doran. I'll be one of your co-hosts for today. I'm an exploration geologist with Coast Mountain Geological, and I work on multiple lithium pegmatite and gold projects in Canada and Ireland.
And my name is Aaron Hanshy. I'm currently a project geologist with Equity Exploration Consultants based in Vancouver, BC. And I'm one of the directors of Ore Deposits Hub, which is an online platform for sharing geoscience and mineral exploration talks to people around the world. Amy and I will be hosting this session today, and we'll hear from several invited speakers. Before we get started, though, I think there's some things that we should cover, and the first is a thank you. Thank you to all of you who are here today, and a really big thanks to our supporting partners, ICRAG and the National Science Policy Network, as well as the other partners and friends of EDIG that you can see on the screen. This session will consist of 4 talks, followed by a Q&A with the speakers of those talks. And then a quick break before we dive into a workshop on unconscious bias, followed by a panel discussion. We have additional resources that are also going on in the background that help people communicate and interact with each other. This includes Padlet, which is an online platform that's like a sticky board or a message platform that people can chat and post resources on, like whatever comments or relevant links you might want to share with your fellow colleagues. There's a link that's going to be put into the chat right now for that. And then in addition to that resource, there's a reminder of the code of conduct for this event. It's going to be posted into the chat as well. You can just take a moment to read that. In general, the point is we're here in a pretty safe space, and it should remain that way in the chat room. We expect everybody to be respectful, be patient, behave appropriately, and just make sure that I like to think of it as make sure that we're taking care of each other, even in these online spaces, right? Yeah, so with that, I'll just briefly cover the chat should have the chat option and then the Q&A option. General information can be found in the chat, and if you have a question that you want to bring forward for our speakers, put that in the Q&A box. We'll get to those questions then after about 45 minutes, as we move into the actual question section. So with that, I'll turn to Amy to introduce our first speaker.
Thanks, Aaron. So the first speaker today is Dr. Aileen Doran. She's a postdoctoral researcher with the Science Foundation Ireland Research Centre in Applied Geosciences. She did her PhD in University College Dublin, and she completed that in 2021. Aileen currently studies copper cobalt deposits in Zambia, focusing on geochemical exploration of mineral deposits. She's also a co-director of the EDIG project and one of the primary organizers of this conference, which aims to make geoscience more accessible and inclusive. And she's done some really amazing work behind the scenes and setting up all of this, so thanks for that, Aileen. And I'll let her speak for herself.
Hi everyone, and thank you for coming to session 2 of the EDIG Conference 2022. My name is Aileen and I'm one of the EDIG volunteers involved in planning the event. But today I'm going to be providing a bit of an incomplete overview of equity, diversity and inclusion in geosciences from a perspective of barriers, challenges and underrepresentation. The ultimate aim of the talk is to share some elements we have learned during the EDIG journey, including some resources, ideas and thoughts. And so this presentation has been compiled by several EDIG volunteers from our resources subgroup who are listed here. An adjusted version of this talk will also be made available after the event with several extra resource pages to help us all continue learning. These resources have been compiled by a huge host of people, so I just wanted to take a second to say thank you to everyone who's given us their time. There are a lot of different ways to talk about equity, diversity and inclusion with several different perspectives. So today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about from the perspective of barriers, challenges and underrepresentation in geosciences from a summary viewpoint. So while these topics are all intertwined with overlapping points, let's begin with barriers. In general, barriers can be thought about as obstacles that prevent or block movement, but there are a lot of different ways barriers are discussed, with each the result of the person's who's writing his own experiences. For example, the image on the right shows one of these examples, which can be applied to many scenarios. The authors summarized barriers into 3 categories: roadblocks, detours, and alternative routes. Roadblocks or unpassable institutional barriers can stop initiatives and other aspects from advancing due to just lack of awareness, understanding, and also support. Detours are passable but require large amounts of time and effort, and these can include a lack of interest and support from others. And lastly, alternative routes. These are different pathways that have to be formed when the route planned is no longer possible. So again, these can depend on other people being able to provide support and guidance, and can also take a long time to overcome. Barriers can also be thought of from the point of view of individual or larger scale perspectives, as they can affect people at any stage and can contribute to a loss of people from geosciences. Many barriers can be systemic and related to structural aspects in institutes and organizations, requiring involvement from those in positions of power to help enact change. But barriers also extend to recruitment and retention and can be impacted by a lack of support from all levels. Addressing barriers also costs those trying to overcome and remove them a lot of time and effort, and this is a burden that often falls on the people most impacted by them. This can have negative impacts on professional development, as it takes away from their own career development. And barriers directly link to challenges and underrepresentation, as all of these topics are connected. The challenges experienced by people in geosciences can come from multiple areas and be related to many different issues. Often the way in which these aspects are discussed focuses on one specific identity and some key challenges they experience. So for example, a really common topic that's discussed is harassment experienced by women. Challenges can be very specific, such as discrimination, sexism, and xenophobia, or also be a lot broader in terms of accessibility or systemic issues that create barriers. People also often have multiple identities that overlap, linking into the concept of intersectionality. So by focusing on one specific identity, many people can actually be excluded from these conversations. However, the way in which we do talk about challenges has changed, with conversations around larger scale issues becoming more and more common, especially around topics that connect multiple people from multiple backgrounds. So we are starting to see more of the complexity of these challenges and identify areas where we still have a lot of learning to do so that we can properly implement change. One example of challenges that can affect multiple people from multiple backgrounds is parenting. So regardless of your position, identity, background, parenting is a challenge to everyone, especially while working. In geology, traditional settings and opportunities often require a lot of travel and time away from home. These can include fieldwork, conferences, and meetings. However, while many of these aspects are required for some job, consideration into how to fully support parents is not always thought about. And this can create new barriers and challenges for many people, and can also result in the exclusion of many people from different opportunities. And not only is there an accessibility issue, there's also an issue of engagement, where parents bring children to events. Many parents may feel excluded from conversations and discussions because other people's fear of not knowing how to engage with children, meaning that there could be a subconscious avoidance of parents with children, resulting in less opportunities for networking. So we all really need to start looking and challenging ourselves to make more of an effort to make those around us feel engaged and included. And this doesn't always have to do with in-person activities, and especially over the last few years, there's resulted in drastic changes in how we engage with one another. We really need to start challenging our assumptions about what we think we see, because as this really nice image here shows, what the world sees in terms of giving a presentation may only be part of the full picture. And the pressures and challenges someone faces may not be visible to everyone. And I just wanted to say thank you to Aileen for sharing this image with me, for using this presentation. But moving forward, how can we fully support parents and other people feel supported, and how can we help each other succeed? Another example of a challenge still emerging is one that impacts research and work opportunities for many people. Parachute science is a concept that is often used to refer to researchers from one country working in another in which they are not from, without local involvement. This also impacts working in other environments, such as lands traditionally owned by other people. Parachute science impacts people from all around the world and is often intertwined with complex histories, including colonization. Many of us work in places outside of our own locations, especially as geoscience can involve significant amounts of travel. And so this is something that needs to be considered by everyone. And in research, this can be considered through meaningful collaborations and inclusion at all stages of grant applications, for example. It is important that this isn't just an add-on to a tick box operation. And so for real change, we need meaningful interactions. So how can an institute start to implement these changes? A great starting place could be discussion groups to get people thinking about ways to identify solutions. And while there are only limited resources on this, as it's an emerging discussion point, here are some examples that will be made available through the presentation after the event. However, these are just two examples from a broad list of challenges. There may be challenges experienced by underrepresented groups and around intersectionality, and there are also challenges in how we discuss things like imposter syndrome, which is often tailored toward specific groups and typically includes what you should do to fix it, when in reality it should be what we can all do. Or tokenism, which can be more damaging to sustainable change than other ways. And then there are many specific challenges to career stage that can affect people from every background, along with the impact of moving to new countries for jobs, especially in a discipline where moving around the world is encouraged to enhance jobs prospectivity. Many of these challenges are only beginning to be talked about or have not been talked about at all. And we have to also remember unconscious biases impact many other elements than interactions with just each other. They can influence job applications, reviews, and so much more. However, these are not in any way a fully representative list of challenges and that impact those in our community. But we are all still learning and figuring out what we need to do to move forward together. And then we come to underrepresentation. So Underrepresentation in geosciences has long been identified as very poor, with reports and discussions referring to diversity data to show improvement or start discussions around how to start improvement. Many initiatives have also popped up to try address underrepresentation and diversity in geosciences, encouraging people from all backgrounds into the discipline. And the common thing we hear is how much diversity is included in geosciences. And in many ways, it is improving and has improved a lot over the last few years. Gender and ethnic background have traditionally been what's focused on in terms of the underrepresented groups focused on in these conversations, and especially when it comes to diversity data. With many differences in the type and quality of data and quantity of data across sectors and disciplines, but also by geography. However, there is a lot more to diversity than just gender and ethnic background, and there is still limited progress and understanding across other represented groups like socioeconomic status, disability, and geographic variation. We know that diverse teams produce better results through improving representation in geosciences will positively impact the field. But improving diversity is only part of the story. We also need to address recruitment and retention. There's still a huge issue around a lack of diverse applicants, but this needs to be considered from the point of view of the applicant. Why are people not applying for jobs in certain areas? And how do we reevaluate the way in which jobs are advertised? And then there's retention. And retention is a big issue in geosciences at the moment, with many challenges related to progression, stability, and support. Many schemes have developed to try and address retention issues like mentoring programs, but they're not always consistent or fully developed. And these are related to barriers and challenges as support needs to come from all levels for it to be effective. Since the start of the pandemic, the way we engage and collaborate with each other has changed, with new opportunities for connecting us through virtual platforms. This has led to new conversations coming up related to experiences with EDI and geosciences, with more people sharing their experiences and the challenges they've faced. These conversations have led to new understanding and also identification of different challenges and barriers that affect people in multiple ways. However, many of these EDI conversations focus on single underrepresented groups and the challenges they experience. But by only focusing on single aspects, some people may be excluded from these conversations, as many people have multiple identities, and these topics are often intertwined with a lot of different aspects. So while a lot of progress and action have come from these discussions, there are a lot of points that we can now start learning from and applying to other aspects and other challenges and underrepresented groups. So while we think about EDI in a certain way, the challenges often affect people from multiple backgrounds, meaning an intersectional lens where we consider multiple identities and backgrounds is really needed. Lots of these challenges connect us, and so we need to bring these conversations together in one place to start learning from one another. There are a lot of really great resources already available from different conversations, but these can also be applied to other backgrounds and situations on different scales. This PowerPoint will be made available afterwards and can act as a starting place for learning. There will be a lot more resources added to this PowerPoint as well, but there's also a huge amount of resources out there to take advantage on that can easily be accessed online or through other areas. Overall, the purpose of this talk was to try to start people thinking about the way we discuss EDI and geosciences, so we can start to learn from each other and redefine the way we work together, so geosciences can become more equitable, inclusive, and accessible. Please remember to add any resources to our Padlet page that was shared at the start of the session, and we'll make sure to include them in the resource pack at the end of this presentation. Thank you. So just to finish up, I just want to thank everyone who's helped us on our own learning journey, and for those who have given up their time to share their resources and experiences. And lastly, thank you to everyone here for listening and taking part in the EDIG conference. We hope you enjoy the rest of the event, and I will chat to you during the workshop panel discussion. Thank you.
Great. No, thanks, Aileen, for that for that talk. And we're going to move on to the next speaker. Again, if you have any questions for Aileen about her presentation, just put them in the Q&A or in the chat or on the Padlet, and we can keep the discussion going. But next, we're going to prepare the video prepare for Briana Brown and her talk. Briana Brown is the Associate Director for the National Science Policy Network, a nonprofit talent network for early career STEM professionals interested in policy and advocacy. She works with more than 1,300 members across the United States, making up more than 70 chapters. Briana previously taught neuroscience and biotechnology and worked at the research department at MD Anderson, and also recently has received a fellowship from Science for Social Equity. Briana holds a master's degree in educational psychology from Texas A&M University, and she is committed to sharing why science is important in society while advocating for inclusivity of historically excluded groups in STEM fields. So, Briana.
Thank you for the introduction. I'm going to share my screen really quickly so we can get started. Can everyone see the screen okay? Awesome.
Yeah,
All good.
Perfect. So, as Erin mentioned, I'm Briana. I hope everyone's having a great Monday, and I'm super excited to be here with you all to share some of my work and hopefully inspire you all to think a little bit more deeply about DEI work in post-secondary education and beyond. So my talk is titled, Everyone Deserves a Seat at the Table, and I aim to address some gaps in STEM education spaces, followed by some calls to action. And you'll notice at the bottom of my screen, there will be small QR codes, and those link directly to my references if you're curious where I got some of this data or quotes from. And yeah, if you have any questions, please drop them in the chat, and I look forward to learning and growing with everyone in this space. So we'll kind of walk through the journey, my journey, our journey together as advocates in this DEI space, the research, some impacts, and then some application. So before we get started, I just wanted to share my philosophy and experience with you all to kind of set the stage for the content that I will share today. So as my bio mentioned, I'm a biologist by training, so I'm not a geoscientist, but still love all the STEM people. And I'm a social scientist as well who works for a nonprofit. And so a lot of my job is getting scientists to use our expertise to make a difference through advocacy and informed decision making. And so sometimes I ask myself, like, how did I end up here? What am I doing? What are my long-term goals? And I think a common term that we use in the social sciences can answer that first part of the question at least. And so positionality and intersectionality are terms that we use broadly to describe kind of where we're coming from and the identities that we possess that influence how we see the world, how we make decisions, and how we interact with others. And so intersectionality as well kind of is the place where we overlap and we intersect, and that's where some of our own positionalities we have in common. And so for myself, just to put it out there how I identify as Black, cisgender female. I'm a mother, I'm a civil servant, a DEI advocate, a leader in my nonprofit. I have dual degrees, and I am committed to social justice, racial justice, and impact-driven work. And so that's important too, because I think sometimes when, even as a minority, I talk about privilege and power and oppression, but there are privileges that I do possess that I should be considerate of. Even having the privilege of coming to speak today is something that all people don't have access to. So I like to put that out there. As I said, I'm a graduate of Florida State University and Texas A&M, where I got my bachelor's and my master's. And so a lot of my work, I grew up in areas that were predominantly Black, and transitioning to institutions that were predominantly white, it was important for me to feel like I was continuing and engaging in the ongoing fight of having spaces be more inclusive, where diverse voices were valued and respected. And so I think of what it means when I'm like, what is a scientist? What is an advocate? What does that even mean? What does it mean for voices to be valued and heard, or even to be diverse? It goes way deeper than gender. It goes way deeper than race. But it's really about making sure everyone feels respected, even if we don't agree, even if we're doing different work, to work towards a common goal of advancing society and making our communities a little bit better. And so I do draw on these experiences and my expertise, and I'm mindful of the lessons that I've learned and how they influence what I see, how I do my work. And like I said, I'm honored to have the opportunity to be able to do research, to be able to work with different communities, to get my own understanding of how to engage in these different spaces while also promoting justice and equity to foster change. I love giving back and recognizing that now that I am in a position of power, I can leverage that to make a difference and sustain the transformation and the change that I want to see. So hopefully by sharing my positionality, you all can think of your own positionalities as we talk more about supporting minoritized voices and individuals in these STEM spaces. So the research. So before we dive into the solutions and implications and different theories of why, I did want to take a moment to assess the what. So I want to take a step back and look at some data to see where some of the gaps are occurring and what are the trends. And so as I mentioned earlier, I was your average Black female entering a predominantly white institution and taking on the feat of being a STEM major, which is perceivably more difficult than some other majors. And I really had no idea of what I was doing or what it would entail, what success looked like. And I attempted to navigate through the university system to the best of my ability. And like the other 23% of Black students who enter college with the intention of graduating with STEM, I kept my major and I was successful, and I was fortunate to be one of the 9% that actually made it through the system to graduate. And so if you look at the chart, you can see that there's a trend that about half of the population of Black students who are attending college are graduating with STEM degrees. And you can see the variation of what those degrees are, but nonetheless, they're still fairly low compared to the opportunities that are out there. And so I thought this quote was really good by, I believe her name is Sarah Friedman, saying that even if Black people or Latinos entered into schools at with the same resources, they're still more likely to drop out or leave college without that STEM degree. And really assessing that it has to be something deeper than just having access to books, having access to classes, that there are some systemic or cultural barriers that are not allowing everyone to have the same rate of success. And so it also continues on beyond college, and we're seeing it in the STEM workplace. We're seeing that out of all the STEM degree people who are getting jobs, only 9% of them are minorities. And even over the last, let's say, upwards 10 years, there's been a slow increase of seeing a change in that over time. And also women are remaining underrepresented in some of the sciences, not all of them, but definitely notable differences in the terms of a lot of women are ending up in health-related fields and not your physical or core sciences. And so I thought that was interesting, again, as a Black person and a woman, seeing that we're still significantly underrepresented and trying to figure out what is the cause of this, why is this happening, and how can we best support people in these spaces. And so a lot of people can have a lot of different reasons why they think that the graduation rate or the work placement rate is low. You could say limited access to resources, lack of acceptance from a belonging perspective, or even lack of acceptance from getting the job or getting into school, lack of support and mentorship, and the list goes on. But what I've learned through a lot of my research is that lack and value are interpreted through the eye of the beholder. So that's why it's super extremely important to, when you're going into your labs, when you're going into these community spaces, to understand your positionality, where you stand, and how that impacts how you view data and how you view what's relatively important to you, your statistics, and how we're trying to make a change in society. And so I can only speak from my personal experiences, and I would say that being a minority is relatively hard. There's been times where I felt overlooked, I wasn't heard, had to work twice as hard. Even from a professional standpoint, I've had degrees my colleagues haven't. I've had this list of experiences and others haven't. And I've felt at times where I was in spaces where maybe I didn't belong, but I was still there because I knew I deserved to be there. So, and I think that's important, one, from a sense of, while I can relate to this, I do think things like imposter syndrome and just the general feeling of being a sense of belonging and having access is not just race-based, but you do see it in the data. And we know that as scientists and researchers and people in the STEM field, we can appreciate numbers because most times numbers don't lie. Now, how we interpret them is subjective, but for the most part, we do have some raw data and we can make conclusions or draw some conclusions from them, and that's super important. And so what I thought was interesting, though, while some of these statistics in terms of underrepresentation may seem fairly low, there is a lot of data to support that being more inclusive, having more diverse groups, collaborating instead of working in isolation, results in more productive teams, it results in better results, better decision making, and et cetera. So I think for me, once I was preparing this talk, what was coming to my mind was, so we see that we have these low statistics in terms of acceptance, graduation, enrollment rates, and things like that. And then we see these high statistics for the benefits of having diverse teams and diverse communities, and there's still a gap when we can clearly see there's a connection or a benefit to having them. Why are we not working harder? And not us, because I think most of us in this space are probably more open to setting the pace and doing this work than the people who are not in here. But how do we bridge that gap? And how have we unintentionally or intentionally perpetuated these systems to us being less successful as a society when we see that being more inclusive, being more diverse is to our benefit? And so I took some quotes, don't mind the last one that's from Kendall in the corner, but in order to improve society, you know, in these diverse voices, we're increasing our innovation. And I think the biggest thing for me was, while we've let this happen for so long, what are the consequences if we don't do something sooner than later? And I think sometimes when things are out of sight, out of mind, you know, we might not see the impact of these systems on our day-to-day basis. However, if we don't intervene and do our part, there's more that's going to hurt us than, you know, a check off or a check box to say that our team wasn't diverse. When it comes to technology or vaccine creation, medical technologies, it can impact the well-being of society. We know that post-COVID, there was a rise in importance of not just being resilient, because we all bounced back from it, thankfully, but from the sense of an important emotional and mental well-being stance, how being more diverse, being more open, being more inclusive can make us feel better as people, being just humans in society. And so what I thought was really cool, aside from seeing all these negatives, was like, let's dream and think big. We see that only 9% of the STEM workforce is Black or brown. But what if, you know, we could get twice as many STEM graduates over the next 20 years? Or as we look in our groups and we sit in these rooms, if we could have over half of our groups being gender or racially diverse. And I think in general too, the feeling of inclusion and belonging is way, like I said, beyond race and gender, but increasing everyone's collective well-being and feeling good about belonging at their institutions, belonging in their labs, and wherever we occupy space. And so some short-term solutions, and if you scan this QR code, I think this is one of the better papers that I'm referencing. I think that these are some short-term solutions, and I think the most important thing is that we can't do nothing, right? Like, we see the data is out there. There's probably a world of more data out there about why it's important to engage in DEI work, have DEI as an integral part of your research, as your day-to-day lives, but nothing can be changed if we don't face it. And I think the first step is just becoming aware and acknowledging, and then taking action where you can. So I think sometimes we may feel like we don't have enough power or we don't have enough time, but I think there are little opportunities each and every day where we can make a difference and start to make that change. And I know, you know, this is a long fight. People have been fighting this fight forever, but it doesn't make it any less worth fighting for. And I think at the end of the day, back to the title of my talk, everyone deserves a seat at the table. I think everyone is a subject matter expert at something, and we all have experiences that can be translated to support evidence-based decision-making. And whether you're a scientist, a community organizer, a politician, a student, there are so many things that you can do to contribute to the greater good. So here are some options. You know, make sure your search committees are diverse, leverage your role in professional societies to advocate for change, research, collaborate with other scientists at other institutions, and educate yourself and educate others. I think everything comes back to education and making sure we're aware and, you know, and sharing research sources and what we know as much as we can. So I think that's most of my talk. And if you want to collaborate with me on LinkedIn, I would love to. I think we work better when we work together, and I'm happy to support anyone that wants to join these efforts with me.
Thank you. My sincere thanks for that talk, Briana. That was excellent. We'll move on to the next talk by Sudeep. So Sudeep Kanungo is a 2022 to 2023 AAAS Science and Technology Policy Fellow in Washington, DC, currently serving in the US Department of Energy's Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy Division within the Geothermal Technologies Office. His decade-plus-long academic career in the University of Utah's Energy and Geoscience Institute has allowed Sudeep to build research partnerships between the university and global energy companies for research funding and to teach oil and gas professionals and students. As an author of multiple research papers and industry reports, Sudeep brings a wealth of experience or expertise from the oil and gas sector to renewable energy, thereby strengthening the energy transition workforce. As a proud member of the LGBTQIA+ community, he's also a passionate advocate of equity, diversity, inclusion, and justice in STEM. So I will allow Sudeep to continue.
Greetings, fellow scientists, colleagues, and friends. I will begin by thanking the EDIG Conference organizers for inviting me to speak at this forum. It's an honor to be here. In this presentation, I will give a critical analysis on the exclusion of the LGBTQIA community in the geoscience field and suggest some ways in which we can improve the status quo to make our field more inclusive and equitable. My co-author of this presentation and colleague, Anne Barrow, will be joining me later in the panel Q&A session. The title of this presentation is LGBTQIA plus representation in geoscience. In today's presentation, I will begin by identifying the problem, which is the invisibility of the LGBTQIA in geoscience. Then I will give a background, the status quo and challenges faced by the LGBTQIA community, some recommendations, and then close with a summary. Before going any further, let me expand the LGBTQIA inclusive acronym. This acronym is used to signify lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, and asexual identifying people in our society and community. The problem. Geosciences are among the least diverse of all STEM disciplines based on research data. This is because it has been historically underrepresented with regard to women and racial and ethnic minorities, let alone sexual orientation and gender identity minorities, along with the strong prevalence of heterosexism, as is the case with other STEM disciplines. So there tends to be a general indifference to LGBTQIA in this field, and the implicit bias at the leadership level perpetuates inequity in the field. In the United States, the Geological Society of America was the first organization to hold a national conference on minority participation in earth sciences and mineral engineering back in 1972, after the passage of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, which is a landmark act. And since then, there has been significant progress with regard to women, racial, and ethnic minority participation, but the LGBTQIA population remains largely isolated and left out in the geoscience field. Biases persist in the professional circles, despite a general shift in attitudes and social norms globally. The Pew Research Center conducted a survey where more than 70% people globally accepted homosexuality. However, we still see biases in professional circles like the geosciences. Let me bring in some statistical data to help contextualize this conversation. 76% of job seekers think about diversity when looking for jobs, and 76% of employees believe racism is a problem in their workplace. This tells you that employees care and feel strongly about racism, stereotyping, prejudice, and discrimination in the workplace. Not just that, 61% of employees feel negatively about EDI, equity, diversity, inclusion, accountability in their organization. And 19% companies with more diverse management teams outstrip others in innovation, meaning that companies that have higher diversity in their management teams do a better job of innovation. This tells you that inclusion really matters. It is the right thing to do, and that a culture grows only when everyone can grow in it. The status quo. Why does this happen? Firstly, there is identity blindness. Sexual orientation and gender identity are not typically visually identifiable. We call this identity blindness. For LGBTQIA people, disclosing their identity remains a matter of personal choice to a large extent, and there is often no incentive to disclose one's identity, so people tend to stay in the closet professionally. Also, sexuality is considered irrelevant to the work output or work performance in hard sciences. We often hear people saying that they don't care if you're gay or straight as long as you do your work well. Statements like these are not only insensitive, but they are sweeping statements that do not professionally support LGBTQIA people in the workplace. There is also a significant lack of role models and allies in geosciences, especially at the senior leadership levels. And all these factors contribute strongly to invisibilizing the LGBT geoscientists and their work and contributions. Additionally, there is also lack of concrete data, especially quantitative data in this field, leaving the room wide open for more research to be done in the area of LGBTQIA in geosciences. What are the challenges that LGBTQIA geoscientists face? Firstly, there are safety issues in fieldwork-based disciplines like geology, where members of the LGBTQIA community fear being discriminated or even dismissed from their positions. Therefore, many scientists refuse to do fieldwork because of this, and the lack of explicit support from leadership contributes to the fear. It does not alleviate it. There has been an increase in EDI committees in organizations in the last couple of years. However, organizations expect marginalized people to lead and promote EDI work. This is a problem in itself because EDI leaders are rarely given or have resources, positional power, and influence to bring real change. Their tenure is often short and burnout is high, contributing to attrition. This results in tokenism, which is detrimental to the overall goal and mission of EDI, which is inclusion and belongingness. And I feel this is a global problem. The culture and the context changes in every country, but biases remain similar. I have observed this personally in my travels worldwide as a geoscientist. Here are some recommendations that can improve the status quo. First, we must normalize respect for individual personal identity. The use of pronouns or preferred pronouns, which is rare in geosciences, must be encouraged. Welcoming and consistently using a person's preferred pronouns can help remove a sense of exclusion among individuals who feel their identities have long been misunderstood. Second, leadership should consistently use the acronym LGBTQIA with specificity in their language. This will be critical in elevating and normalizing such voices, as well as alleviating fear of discrimination, harassment, or assault. Third, leaders must endorse and promote coaching and training of diversity in their organizations by taking active part in coaching and training. This is known to be very beneficial for all the employees and leadership. As well as leaders should promote mentor-mentee relationships between LGBTQIA geoscientists to support the expansion of their voices. Fourth, institutions housing geoscience must develop outreach programs and expand them to demonstrate that this field is an equitable and inclusive space for LGBTQIA geoscientists, researchers, faculty, and students, penetrating their programs down to the middle and high school level. This will be critical in solidifying and establishing geoscience as a competitive field in which diverse human perspectives drive the highest levels of scientific and technical inquiry. But perhaps the best way to start all of this is to have authentic conversations with your colleagues and friends at work, based on genuine human curiosity and a compassionate understanding, which will help LGBTQIA people feel comfortable and included in the institution. I'll summarize by saying that acknowledge, support, and act. Acknowledge the presence of LGBTQIA in your organization. Support LGBTQIA by providing coaching and mentorship and finding role models and allies. And act through authentic, genuine conversations, using inclusive language and behavior on a regular and consistent basis. I will end with a quote which is relevant to this discussion, and this quote is by the first openly elected gay senator in the United States, Tammy Baldwin, who said that there will not be a magic day when we wake up and it's now okay to express ourselves publicly. We make that day by doing things publicly until it's simply the way things are. With that, I would like to thank you for your attention, and we welcome any questions via email on this presentation.
Thanks so much for that powerful presentation, Sudeep. We look forward to hearing from you and Anne in the Q&A session. But we're going to go ahead and move on to our last video of the session, which is by Martin Griffin, who is a UK-based senior mining geotech engineer who works for the international multidisciplinary consultancy called Paison. He is neurodivergent and registered as disabled by being visually impaired. Martin specializes in mining, ground risk, and uncertainty for international projects, from concept to closure, including things like tailings dams, heap leach operations, and open pit assessments. Currently, Martin serves as a Geological Society Council member, and he's involved in several other international geotechnical and outreach organizations. Martin has been an EDI advocate and mentor since 2013 in the geoengineering sector, and is a frequent LinkedIn blogger on all aspects of EDI, disability, and neurodiversity. Martin's actually a very special guest today for this EDIG 2022 conference, because Martin was the very first speaker at the EDIG 2020 conference, and we really appreciate him coming back and joining us for another another fantastic conference that's been organized and that we're right in the middle of. So with that, we'll let Martin and play Martin's recorded talk.
Hello everyone. Today I'm going to talk about changing mindsets, aka plate tectonics, a theory explaining the structure of the post-pandemic world with its many associated phenomena, climate change, fundamentalism, and such like, resulting from the interaction of flexible EDI plates which move slowly over the underlying old order. I was born in 1971 in Northern Ireland, so you can work at my age if you wish. I grew up in Cornwall, moved to Scotland, moved to Sussex and North East England, and now eventually ending up in Kent via London. Graduated in 1995 from Exeter University, or Camberwell School of Mines in 1995, with a 2:1 degree in industrial geology. I'm married with one wife, one daughter, living in Ashford in Kent. I'm a ground engineering professional. I'm a chartered engineer and a chartered geologist. I love my family to bits, I love Liverpool Football Club, and I love good science fiction, when I have free time, that is. And a bit more about me. I'm a comorbid 24/7. That means I have a lived experience. I have an intersectionality of various conditions. I'm dyslexic. I'm dyspraxic. I'm autistic. I have heightened anxiety due to my autism. I have a vision impairment with a condition called keratoconus. To an engineer who likes Excel generally, I express my conditions in this Excel equation. I'm a bit of Rayman, Forrest Gump, Sheldon, and Captain Jack. On a good day, I'm a happy bunny on the right-hand side, but when my coping strategies don't work, I'm like death warmed up. My eye conditions are bent cornea, which is a lifelong condition. The occurrence is about 1 in 350 people. It's normally seen in both eyes, or usually one, but I have it in both conditions and I need ongoing surgery about every 5 years. The causes are unknown. It's either genetics, eye rubbing, or a mixture of both, or environmental factors. And a shameless plug to the charity to which I'm a trustee. Well, I'm a double chartered person. I'm a geologist and engineer, and both think in different ways. Geologist thinks in colour, an engineer thinks in black and white. A geologist likes qualitative information, an engineer really likes quantitative information. A geologist is a time traveller, an engineer is a prophet looking forward. A geologist likes thinking, an engineer is tinkering. We think in very different ways, but again, you might say, what have I got to talk about diverse mindsets? Well, that's my day job. I'm also a late workplace EDI champion and EDI advocate for geoscience, mining, construction and engineering sectors. This means solving problems for the way ahead, or what I see as the next stumbling block in a company, or helping a company to move forward by providing feedback to HR or directors. And I did that in my last role. And I also encourage junior and senior staff, like by mentoring or doing presentations through them, or doing regular blogs online. I emphasise for others' pain and sharing their joy. I'm coaching whoever wants to learn. And I'm instructing through word and deed. I practice what I preach. I deal with a lot of sensitive information, and I'm working with my own personal pain, my own tiredness, and my own vulnerability. So what has the world taught me about EDI? Firstly, EDI is a business. It's seen as a trendy item thing, nice to have, trying to fit the ideals of equity, inclusion, and diversity to get that utopia, that Goldilocks spot, that Venn diagram magic moment, the belonging factor. A lot of companies start on an EDI journey, but of being unaware, compliant, strategic, to integrated, and then disrupting the old order. Or to put it in another word, they start with no awareness, basic awareness, leading to enhanced understanding, organisation integration, and then organisation sustainability. But yet, something's failed in the EDI big picture. Lots of groups, such as disabled people, over the last 25 years, have not had much exposure and not been treated equitably, as you can see on the chart below. Some groups, like gender, have raised their exposure with respect to time, and some groups, like LGBT and BAM, have fluctuated with respect to time. So what are the common challenges that we face as EDI advocates and EDI champions? Firstly, EDI is not prioritised. There's no measurable strategy in place. There's not enough resources allocated. There's usually one person doing all the work, or a few dedicated followers. There's too many blind spots. There doesn't seem to be any urgency to it. It will always be done tomorrow. There's a lack of responsibility. No one wants to head it up. There's always problems selecting the appropriate leadership style, and there's always implicit biases involved. And we have to overcome those. Some of us may be familiar with the Cougar-Ross change curve that talks about the 7 stages, or perhaps 9 stages of change, being shock, denial, anger, frustration, loss of confidence leading to depression, followed by experimentation, decision making and planning, integration and acceptance. We must collectively stop ourselves from being tired and share the load. We must be prepared to make mistakes and run the risk of upsetting those who are accustomed to being in power and privilege. We must look very hard at the decisions we make and making it aware who is in the room and who is not in the room. So how do you see change happening? Do you see it from the senior leadership, spreading down and disseminating best practice down to the grassroots levels? Or do you see it grassroots activists spreading up to the top leadership team and integrating within the company? Personally, I see it as a middle out approach, compromise between like middle management or people who are within the company for some time, integrating with the company structure, knowing how the company works, and working with senior leadership team, reading with new starters and integrating together. Being an agent for change is an advocate, and it starts with each one of us, not just the senior leadership team or the activists at the grassroots. An advocate is an individual capable of both formulating, pursuing the purposes of his or her own, and being responsible for the actions taken to fulfill those purposes. We should act in a way that doing unto others would have them do unto us. We should only act in ways that we would want to be, everyone else would want to act. We can't act hypocritically. For example, we couldn't murder somebody and expect someone else to murder us. Change. How do we navigate change? Trust me, it's long, it's arduous, it's tiring. First of all, we resist resisting. We validate our feelings. We manage our expectations. We flex our ecotechnical muscle. We lean up into routines. We reflect on our own resilience. We prioritise our self-care. We savour the good and we express ourselves. And it's not just going to be a linear path. It may go round in a wiggly circle. We may go round in a lot of roundabouts, but it's important to enjoy the journey, not just the destination in a perfect utopia place. As we move on our EDI journey, we get labelled. How we respond depends on our personality type. Are we analytical? Are we a driver? Are we expressive? Are we amicable? Many accusations will have come on our path, but we've got to keep on going on the journey. We've got to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. We've got to be assertive, bossy, keep on telling the truth when it's difficult, keep on taking up the space when there's too much to do, keep on asking the hard questions, and keep on thinking about integration, and don't compromise. Each of us will have different ways of expressing change and manifesting change. We can be a driver, we can be expressive, we can be amicable, or we can be analytical. And this will be manifest in different ways by telling, asking, or controlling, or modes. So which type of change agent are you? Are you a driver, expressive, analytical, amicable, or a bit of snotty green or a bit of purple? What type are you? But when we advocate, we should be careful not to mask or cover up things. We have to be genuine and authentic ambassadors for change. Are we hiding up or covering up our appearance, affiliation? Are we covering up our advocacy roles, that specific topics that we don't want to talk about it? Or are we covering up our association? Or our conditions? For example, my autism. Could I just be masking my autism to fit in? As we become a change agent, we should be aware of the knowns and unknowns. Things that are known to others, known to self, not known to self, not known to others. Therefore, things that are shares, hidden, things that are blind, unknown. We should be aware of those in ourselves and in society and in organisations. We should be aware of confirmational bias, the tendency to recall information that supports our prior beliefs. Prototype bias, believing that someone is best fit for a job or task based on stereotypes. Similarity effect, the tendency to trust and be attracted to people just like ourselves. or anchoring bias, using older information that is acting as an anchor, where people are underlying influences by previous information when facing new situation. And also, finally, the small number bias, overgeneralizing about a group or population based on limited evidence. So, what type of ally are you? How socially aware are you? Are you residing in the core? Are you not listening to people who are underrepresented? Or are you living in the mantle? Are you passive and curious? Or are you an ally moving up to an advocate for change? Being an advocate for change means being vulnerable, being well informed of decisions and of best practice to be an implementer of change. By changing mindset, we need good connections and diverse connections. One way of exploring our connections and our connection group is by drawing a grid. On the y-axis, we have different genders, different nationalities, different protective characteristics, from LGBT to BAM groups. And on the rows, we have different types of groups of people, like from university friends to friendships, from people we work with. And then we can write down people that we know in each of these boxes. And I'll leave you to do those exercises. So, what makes us better allies, and therefore being changed to change mindsets? We have to confront our own biases. We lift others up by advocating for inclusion in our daily life. We can't just do it on a special event, like Disability Awareness Week. We have to support the community they advocate for. We do not seek a leadership position per se. We share growth and fruitful opportunities with others to participate. We do not view venting as a personal attempt, but promote opportunity for lasting change. We recognise systematic inequalities and the impact of microaggressions. We believe underrepresented people's lived experiences are important. We listen, we provide proactive support, and we self-reflect and change what we can. We encourage open conversations about equity and justice. We learn more about the history and the struggles that you are supporting. We figure out what's best that can change systems in society and in the workplaces. We figure out what best can change society and what can't. We share the voices of those who we are supporting, and we learn and listen from and accept criticism from others. 2 internal mindsets to try to avoid: the head in the sand and being blind to EDI and being blind to things around us, and best practice. Or we can be a jack in the box, coming up with best practice every 2 minutes and not keeping focused on the real goal. Finally, 6 external influences to try to avoid: little guys, people that know a little but think they know a lot; gatekeepers; costers, people who want to put a budget to everything; white knights who want to fix us; micromanagers who want to control everything we do; or loud voices and loud influencers who shout out with the voices with everything loudly.
Thanks very much for that, Martin. That was excellent. I'd like to thank again all our speakers so far. You've given us a lot to discuss, so I'm really looking forward to the Q&A. And that being said, we'll head straight into the Q&A part of the discussion. So unfortunately, Aileen won't be joining us for this part of the session. Instead, she will be part of the panel discussion in the workshop. That will be after the break. As well as all the speakers that you've met so far, we will also be joined by Anne Barrow, who is an editor and writer with over 20 years of experience, specializing in science, public health, and international affairs and diplomacy. She co-wrote an article with Sudeep for Scientific America about the LGBTQIA+ experience in the geosciences. So she's well placed to answer any questions regarding this topic or EDI in general. So we've gotten plenty of questions so far. Feel free to keep adding questions into the chat because we hope for and encourage audience participation. And reminder as well about the conference Padlet if you want to leave any comments, things like that. So with that being said, Aaron, if you want to start.
Sure. Thanks again to all of our speakers. And I think we'll go ahead and get started with one of our opening questions. And this will go to everybody for input. But maybe we'll just ask if Anne or Sudeep wants to start it off, since Anne is the person we haven't heard from yet. I would give everybody a good space. But the question that I'd like to open the chat with is that over the last few years, mostly since Zoom has become one of a popular communication platform, the way that we engage and listen to each other has begun to shift. And there's a lot of new ways for networking and collaboration that weren't really possible before. How can we continue to use this to grow as a community and continue to learn from each other in the EDI sphere?
Thank you. I'm glad to be here, and thank you for the opportunity to participate with everyone today. Yeah, over the last few years, we've seen lots of changes, and that's one element that I've observed over the years in my different factors of my career. Listening to the presentations today, I was struck by how similar many of the elements that were presented today really span across disciplines. So in terms of the presentation, I saw and heard elements of my own experience in different fields. And I think that really speaks to the idea that whether it's geoscience or another field, these are issues that everybody is encountering and addressing at various different levels. And so continuing to go forward, one element is to continue building on what we already know, what we've already brought forward. And I think there's been years of development that's come up from the bottom, from the idea of bottom to top awareness that's come from people who are experiencing these things and raising the flag to tell us that there are problems with, quote, the way things have always been, or this is just how we do it. And so we continue to talk about it and build from where we are. But I think there's a lot of new avenues that we can pursue. And, in talking with Sudeep, we looked at a lot of different concepts like technology, social media, these types of conferences that can be so much more accessible to so many of us through technology like Zoom. And then obviously training, continued and extensive training. It's a unique space for honest conversations to do en masse, and really having management and leadership buy-in to not just say, yes, we support this, but to be a part of it and to continually being consistent in allowing for these conversations to happen, but also providing the support for them and actively engaging for them. And then another concept would be professional development, holding space for development specifically around EDI, so that they're giving as much value to these conversations and these issues that many of us are facing across disciplines, rather than only focusing on and engaging in things that maybe drive our job duties or specializing or bottom lines.
Yeah, thanks, Anne. I think that lays out a lot of the good points. A lot of the things that we can do to keep building a network. I'm gonna actually use this moment to shift this question as I go, because I want to see Briana probably can chime in on how implementing these these tools and such as professional development and trainings, or any of the things that Anne listed, how these affect the data and the numbers of people involved in STEM fields and how this builds a network. And then before we go to the final question, then give Martin a chance to chime in, is like how maybe that has, like, you've seen any effect in these new tools like Zoom, like digital communication, and then we can move on. Yeah, does that sound a fair way to include everybody on this first group question?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to take a stab at it. So I think it helps a lot and from a multiple perspectives. So for my organization, when we got work or money to do DEI work, we started inviting more diverse voices to host the sessions. So I think from a train-the-trainer model, you see more representation, and then also making it more socially acceptable to have these spaces in the room, whether it's from a leadership perspective or someone that's in the community viewing and receiving the resources. I think we have a little bit of time to see how that influences, graduation rates and retention in STEM. But I think, even sometimes with indirect mentorship or just having another person of color in the room for those groups is providing support. It's not necessarily direct, but I think it does help. But I think it's just one of many steps towards the goal that we're trying to achieve. So I hope that answers the question, but I'll let anyone else answer as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, I didn't mention Sudeep, but if you want to chime in on this question, this is one of our group questions, so everybody is invited.
Say something. Say something. Yeah, I think it's also, if we go like from a top-down leadership approach, a lot of leaders, or who are perceived as leaders, directors or such, like, or company or organization, whoever you perceive a leader, I think they have to be more open with their lifestyle and become a role model, so that if they're more authentic and be more real, I think they sometimes hide behind a sort of image and more corporate and not prepared to share vulnerability. I mean, maybe it may cost them a lot and they've had to progress by masking a lot, but I think the only way you're going to see more equity is by more role models, and there's a lack of role models in underrepresented groups.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it just saddens me.
That's why you are one of the most important role models. Like, you're taking anyone who's a role model and doing this mentorship, they're really instrumental in basically being I hope beacon's not too strong of a word, but you're a beacon for the younger people who need that, right?
I'd just like to add to what others have said, and I am in full agreement with Anne, with Briana, and with Martin. But what I'd like to say is, or reiterate, is that leadership commitment is very important for furthering the EDI cause, because without their commitment, it will not cascade down to the grassroots level and bring real change. So we need leaders who are vocal about it, who express the need for diversity, who acknowledge the social inequities, and also recognize that their organization is not a level playing field to start with. I think that's where it has to begin for the top-down approach to work. And that's my take on it.
Yeah, could I just add, I did a longer presentation for my own research based on my own presentation I did earlier, and I answered all those questions and did the mind cloud of all those 8 topics of stumbling blocks EDI. And leadership comes down as one of the most important factors. If you don't get leadership backing, leadership needs to have so much influence on EDI and the strategy for a company and organization. And hopefully the younger generation in this conference will be the leaders of the future. Because I'm getting grey hair. At 51, I'm too old I'm seen as too old to get into those positions at the moment.
Wait, A little gray hair never hurt any of us. I'm starting to get my hook anyway. Awesome, thank you all. And then we'll start doing some more individual questions. So I'll turn to Amy to introduce the next one.
Yeah, we have a lot of overlapping questions. People seemed quite interested in discussing that kind of top-down or bottom-up model. So we had a question directed at Martin. You presented an interesting view about this top-down or bottom-up model, but from my experience, the experience of the person asking the question, in Portugal, usually it's the middle positions occupied by people around 30, 40 years of age that are more aware of these topics and interested in change. How do you think is the best way to do it, to kind of approach change from that middle position, I suppose, if that's how I interpret the question?
I can't give you a proper answer, but I think there's a lot of us who are we're not graduates, but we're not haven't got that leverage position. And I think sometimes we mentor, we can be those sort of catalysts and sort of putting seeds in, or if we stand out in a crowd about I stood at one company about neurodiversity and disability at work, and then directors started asking me, how do we do right policies and how do we include disability in the workplace? So I think it's almost doing everything. That's why I say I'm a lead. I work because I have to do everything voluntary. I don't get paid for anything I do for companies, and I think we have to just be almost bridge between the director and the graduate. And it's probably not a proper answer. Sorry. I find it very difficult. I just find it very difficult because if you have, as Sudeep said, if we haven't got everything got leaders involved, we're just fighting against the brick wall or go round in circles. Because you may have all the enthusiasm of youth, but then you don't have the experience of a 60-year-old. So you need that. That's that balance.
It's something that Sudeep, you approached, or you kind of mentioned in your topic, that one of the greatest vectors for change is these kind of genuine, open-minded conversations, and maybe that's a bit similar to what Martin is talking about. But often that's those conversations are initiated by these kind of underrepresented groups. So how can we as allies, I suppose, take on that responsibility of initiating these conversations? Like how can we kind of encourage allies to take that responsibility instead of it always being us, I suppose?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think allies play a very significant role in EDI because allies can do three things, in my view. They can be disruptors, which means they can be agents of change. They can be influencers, or they can be just simply awesome people that you work with and who are supportive. And I think by playing either or all of these roles, allies make a big contribution to the EDI cause in any organization, be it in the educational sector or in the corporate sector or in the federal government. Now, regarding the question of your question about how they can make these conversations, I think that is a difficult one because it is hard to start these conversations, I would admit. And one has to be careful how these conversations about EDI are started in an organization because they lay the foundation for the future, right? So they have to be done in a very delicate manner. And I agree, sometimes it's very hard to do it alone. We need support, like even speaking from a personal standpoint, it is hard to sort of just go and start this conversation about EDI. So what I recommend, and one of the best things to do, is to hire or to take the support of practitioners, consultants, community-based organizations, or third-party vendors. And we have so many practitioners and consultants who are available to help us with developing an EDI program that is personalized or that caters specifically to the organizational outcomes that you're looking for. And by leadership supporting it, again, we come back to leadership. By leadership supporting it, it can even take it to another level, because that's how sort of the practitioners and consultants and community-based organizations can create an impact for your organization by understanding the structure, the mission, the goals, and the diversity makeup of your organization first, right? And like Anne mentioned, we are creating a uniquely safe space for holding authentic, genuine conversations by allowing coaching and training to happen. Right. So I would strongly recommend looking into third-party vendors and community-based organizations to start these conversations, especially if you're doing it for the first time, and especially if you don't want to do it alone, which is completely understandable.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Go kind of to the experts, basically.
And feel free to add anything, Martin and Briana. I don't know if I answered it, but it's good to sort of chime in on these ideas anyway. So feel free to add in.
Sure.
Perhaps talk. Sorry, Briana.
Oh, thank you. I think one important thing that allies can and need to consider is we need to continually educate ourselves and other people around us to actively work to build that trust and between us and the people we work with, whether they are immediately part of our communities or if they are different from us in some way. We can become role models for other allies in showing that allyship works. And also critical is challenging ourselves and others to interrogate our own assumptions and support others by showing that it is okay to self-examine. Indeed, it's important to self-examine and ask critical questions about what are our roles in either creating more equitable spaces or being part of the barriers.
Yeah, thanks, Anne. I'm really enjoying the focus or this topic, the way that this conversation is turning out from like a top-down perspective. And I think we're slowly going to go through these questions and work our way like from these top levels and these leadership levels to how we can change the down part of top-down. I'll turn to Briana next and ask this one, which is another proposal from the top, but we have an anonymous question here. It's probably from Padlet. My company is launching a DEI scholarship to help overcome some of the historical inequities faced by marginalized communities in earth science. Any suggestions on how we can maximize the impact of this award? So yeah, from the top.
Yeah, for sure. So I think first you probably want to identify what impact you're trying to measure. Is it getting more, access to more students? So is it like, let's say less money, more students, more money, fewer amount of students, and really identifying that. But also sometimes I think it's helpful to ask the community, if you can, before, like, what do they need? Like, all students don't really need, book scholarships. So if it's a book scholarship, kind of reassessing and asking those groups what would be most helpful for them in achieving their goals, and having a few different options, I think would be most helpful. But just that outreach is important, and outreach in any sense takes a lot of time and work to do. So definitely, engaging with the different groups, the different universities, even within predominantly white institutions, there's marginalized groups there as well. So just really being aware, kind of doing a landscape analysis of who's out there, what's out there, what resources are already being offered, and how you can complement those instead of being competitors with them.
Awesome, thanks. It's I think like we often, it's a good top-down question, and like where to start from the top when you're implementing such a thing like a scholarship or a method to get people involved.
You've got to be very careful of not having tokenism, because tokenism can come in very easily.
Yeah,
and it
absolutely.
always something like when I was doing my research on all this, EDI. When I said EDI is a business, I think it's now seen as this universal selling point between companies and organisations. So if we've got the best strategy for EDI, we have the most inclusive workplace. And if we've got a great awards or something, it seems as this is how we're going to attract the next generation of talent. And that hurts me, because underrepresented groups are the ones who are going to probably suffer the most, because we won't know how that system works, or we don't get told about this, or only people who know get told this. So it has to be accessible to everyone in every format possible. Go to the places that you wouldn't go to normally and talk to the people who are those, those underrepresented. Don't, perhaps it's where the integration does come. You need to talk to those who are those underrepresented groups. If leaders aren't discussing their protected characteristics, then talk to those who have declared it to be on those decision-making boards or something.
I'd agree with you, Martin. I think that's a great point you make. And what I can add to that is that I think it's becoming so important now to view your entire institution and organization from a holistic, integrated EDI lens. EDI cannot just be treated as a siloed or as a business function that sits in the HR department or in the, in one department. It has to percolate everywhere. And we have to look at every single thing we do with an EDI lens. And that's where the future is going, really. Without that, it's not going to work as a siloed device or as a siloed tool that we have. It really has to be embedded in everything. So it has to be embedded in the mission and applied that way. And that's where I see the future of EDI going. I mean, as Martin suggested, otherwise it can become a vicious circle.
That's why I left my old company, because I was trying to get 20% of my role to be doing EDI and then doing 80% engineering geology. But it was not compatible with the business model. So I had to leave because of that. But that's why I see my long-term goal. But there's very few opportunities to get that, because it's. I think I could put Little Warriors or something at the top, one thing. But I didn't want to offend anyone who was HR, but you've touched upon it. I think HR has so dominated the EDI space that it's become a business function, but it should be a inclusive company with every strand of the business. It should be the business DNA. It should be inclusive, conscious inclusion from the start, from recruitment to when someone leaves the company. It should just be part of everything.
Absolutely, absolutely. And like you said, Martin, these little microaggressions or the feeling, feeling othered and these kind of psychological stresses, they take away from an employee, in the sense they prevent an employee from bringing their whole self to work. And over time, it just creates fatigue and it just causes people to leave an organization. And so that's why it has to be sort of holistic and integrated in its approach. So I hope the point is taken.
Yeah, thanks very much. Makes a lot of sense. It's like what Aileen was talking about in her talk as well. It's not just, you can't just focus on one aspect of EDI. Everything is intersectional, and that goes with the approach to remediating it as well. We have a question in, I suppose, Briana, maybe you'd be best placed to answer this, but feel free anyone to chime in. What kinds of measurements are implemented in your organizations to monitor the progress on true inclusivity, not only on the percentage of diverse people, but also in their belonging and their inclusiveness in the organization?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think something that we've been spending a lot of time on. So my organization this year took an approach to kind of have a few different methods. So we've hosted a town hall, We provided anonymous surveys where people can give feedback. I think we really focused more on the questions that we were asking. That was a little different in our approach. We've had focus groups, we've had working groups, we have Slack little affinity group communities where people can discuss and bring their issues or any points of clarification. Even like to our DEI statement, we opened it to our entire membership base to allow them to give feedback and comments. So I think we're just trying to create a lot of different two-way streets on how to get feedback, and then codifying that feedback into different forms of numbers and percentages that we can qualitatively or somewhat quantitatively assess. So just having different modalities I think is super important. We do an annual member survey. At the end of some Zooms, we can rank, on a scale of 1 to 10, how did you feel when you left? Did this increase your likelihood of wanting to participate in a future event, etc.? But I think it's really more so on what we're asking than just giving questions out, but really framing it in a way to dig at how people are feeling before and after they leave an event, and are we doing as much as we can to try to be transparent and create the environment that we say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. There's never just going to be one measurement or one approach that will tell you, exactly how your organization is doing. It's through a range of different tools, as you said. Thanks very much. Yeah, Sudeep.
I'd like to add something there. Great point, Briana. And what I'd like to add here is that, in this day and age where data science is so important, we're all sort of craving data everywhere and anywhere. And it's very important for organizations to build a good database on EDI internally, which can be utilized, which should be transparent. It should be, the EDI database should be transparent to all people, and it can be used as a resource to design and implement your EDI programs. And for example, an example comes to my mind that I don't think we have a good integrated database about that gives you data about post-secondary education patterns of minority communities, be they sexually minoritized or in general, minority communities in the United States. And we need a database like that with quantitative data that can be integrated with other data sets, but also can be used as a pivot to guide your research programs, even when even if you're writing an article, say, on diversity. So when Anne and I were writing an article, we were constantly struggling to find data that we could use in the article to make a point. And when I say data, I mean quantitative data. So yeah, so data building is very important, I feel.
Thanks, Briana and Sudeep, for answering that question about data and sort of how we can measure the success of the tools that we're implementing in the EDI space, but in industries. One of the things that came up in that is that Briana said was also one of the best ways is to get feedback, right, from everybody, not just from the people at the top, not even just from the people in this room. So I'd like to ask Anne to get in on this one. There's a question from somebody who works in an active mine. 70% of the miners have a conservative mindset on EDI. The company at the top is working and hiring minorities and making a diverse workplace, but there's kind of some resistance to that in order to sort of at the bottom. And so the question really is, how do you start these conversations in any space, and whether it's a minority that is racial, like Sudeep said, if it's a racial minority, sexuality minority, disability minority, how do you even start that conversation with maybe a bigger work group?
I think that, like Sudeep said, it can be a very challenging conversation to initiate. I think one key is to, before even starting the conversation, is to try and look at, I think like Briana said, what do you want to get out of what you're, what do you want to measure? So in this sense, what do you want to talk about and why are you having the conversation? Because your conversation may be very different if it is a conversation in reaction to a problem, or if it is a starting point saying, we want to have these conversations and make them a bigger part of our organization and a more equitable conversation, a more inclusive conversation. So like the questioner presented, if you have sort of a dual landscape where you've got 70% of your employee group having one perspective and the management trying to implement something different, you're going to have that big clash between the top down and the bottom up. And in many parts of EDI, we've seen where we've gotten so far sort of has at least come from the bottom up, saying, identifying those problems and identifying the inequities and the injustices. And so it is a challenging place to start a conversation. And really, in this instance, I think one of the impetus lies with management and leadership to really exert, this is an important conversation. We understand there's disagreement, but these disagreements cannot be, I think as Sudeep said, disagreeable. They need to be done with respect. They need to be advanced with the understanding that our experiences, our backgrounds, all of these things influence how we experience our interactions with the world. And particularly if this individual is speaking of something that is coming from management, I think management really has to hold fast to that commitment. And while allowing for these open discussions, shape it in a really respectful way that protects that mission of EDI.
Yeah, no, thanks, Sam. I completely think you're right. If anyone else would like to chime in on communication, particularly like from maybe switching now to the bottom up, this would be a good.
I think it's the role of the ally as well. I can give an example. About 4 years ago, I was bullied at work and harassed because of my disability. People at work witnessed it, but no one was prepared to stand up against this director. Everyone had this bystander effect. I went to HR. This director, I hope he's not listening, but I don't think he would be. But I worked for 4 weeks because of it, and nothing got really done. So what? I think it takes all of us to be allies to want to read about other people's conditions, or if their disability, their conditions, or their protected characteristics, and where they're coming from. I think we've got to be better allies and support one another. And I said to my wife, my best sounding board, I was going to say, I think sometimes we can become very selfish and looking out for our own. I could look after neurodiversity and say that's the end of EDI, but I think that's when we miss the goal as well, because we're focused on one bit of EDI, and that's the answer to the problem. But we've got to see a holistic approach. We can't just see one bit of it or one aspect. We've got to see everyone feeling involved, everyone thriving in their chosen career.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Martin. I was going to say allies are a key to that. I think they're the secret heroes and the secret champions behind the scenes. When you hear that comment that you know is not in alignment with your DEI practices or principles, you can use that opportunity to speak up subtly. You don't have to, go start a protest or anything, and just say, hey, have you thought about X, Y, Z? Or, talking to upper management, a lot of what they're interested in is money and increasing efficiency. And, we just shared some statistics on how even just having a diverse mindset can increase that. So when you start sharing those benefits that they may not be as explicit, I think that also helps too, but definitely the allies and using any opportunity for interaction, small or big, to kind of speak your stance and then do your part.
And I think,
Sorry,
Anne, go first, please.
no, please, you go ahead. I'm already.
Okay, so yeah, I think great points made there. And I think these conversations have to be ongoing. They have to be regular. You cannot just do it one time and forget about it, because then you're back to square one. So the need for consistency is something I would like to flag. And even if there is a reaction, there's an adverse reaction after the first instance, there are ways to tackle it. So you have to take a second stab at it and not stop short after, if the response from the first conversation wasn't favorable, you have to look at it from another perspective and come back to it and tackle it again. So consistency and regularity is very important. And that's where leadership buy-in, again, plays a very big role.
Leadership have to be, and that leaders have to be accountable. If they say they want to be more equitable and inclusive, employees have to keep them accountable, I think.
Correct.
Or else they're just, it's
Yes.
that quiet quitting phenomenon. People just leave or won't give 100% for their company.
Yeah, and those efforts can die out very quickly if there's no leadership buy-in. So if their neck is not on the line, so to speak, it's not going to work out. You're not going to get what you're looking, what you're trying to achieve. So.
Yeah, oh, that's really true. Like top down has to meet bottom up.
Correct.
We're reaching the end of the Q&A session. There's still a lot of questions in the chat here and in this question and answer box that we're not going to get to, but I'll invite all of you to type in answers in this sort of Q&A box if you want as the rest of session 2 goes forward. But first, before we wrap up completely this session, I would like to invite any last comments. We've talked a lot about this top-down, bottom-up strategies for both sides, the way that allies can be allies and be better at it, and the importance of actually everybody in any organization at promoting EDI values. In the chat, we have questions about intersectionality. We have questions about unconscious biases that come up, and we'll continue to talk about those through the rest of session 2. But I just wanted to give each of you a chance to for your final thoughts for this Q&A session before we take a break and move to the workshop.
I think that, the millennium generation, the Gen X generation, I think are more aware of EDI. But I think those who are in academia, who like lecturers, I think they should be trying to push more like an EDI module or some sort of, like we do engineering ethics, we do geoethics as core modules. I think that could be a really powerful tool to be teaching. So when graduates go into the workplace or do research, then they have got this firm foundation on EDI. And I've just written a paper. That's a shameless plug because I'm writing a paper on that as well at the moment. So if anyone's got any thoughts on how to implement that, I've got my own ideas, but that's my own ideas.
Okay, my last thoughts would be, I think we've reached a stage in EDI where we realize that the cost of not addressing EDI is detrimental to the organization in every which way, and it impacts the bottom line of your organization, even whether you're in the profit sector or the nonprofit sector, across the board. So we have to address EDI, we have to tackle it, and I think it's best to do it with a holistic lens that we talked about in this discussion, and view everything, every single thing that you do in your organization with the EDI, with a holistic, integrated EDI lens. Thank you.
I think final thought would be geosciences, along like many other areas, are really at risk if we fail to address these issues, the questions of diversity, the questions of equity, and inclusion. There are so many challenging issues facing societies and communities every day that geoscience plays a really specific role in contributing to finding solutions for. So if we are hamstringing our field and our industries and our educational institutions by failing to incorporate the people and ideas and experiences that really drive innovation, because as we all have said, we know that that is key. Diversity drives innovation. And if we're hamstringing ourselves, we're doing a great disservice both to our industry field as well as the greater societies that we all depend on and work in.
And I'll share a little bit too, and I just want to say thank you to all my fellow panelists. You said so many great things. I think just, being open to being a lifelong learner, receiving information and giving information is so important. And while we all may have different identities and positionalities, we don't have everything. And I think there's always a fight for somebody else that we can be fighting for, and just being open to continuing that conversation from whatever different perspective you're coming from. So like Sudeep said, be consistent, because this is a forever thing. So buckle down and let's do it.
Fantastic. No, that's a good way to. I think that's a good approach. Buckle down and let's do it. Yeah. No. Thanks again so much to all of our panelists. Say thanks to my co-host Amy. Thanks to EDIG for organizing this whole session. And we're going to take a 15-minute break. We'll be back right at that hour. I hope everybody can stick around, have a coffee, a tea, glass of water, whatever you need, and join us for the part 2 of session 2. We'll have a workshop focused on implicit biases and how we can approach them in our workspace.
Thank you for the excellent moderation, Aaron and Amy, and to all my fellow co-panelists. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah, brilliant.
All right. We'll be back shortly. Thanks.